The children in the compound waved as usual. "Auntie Sarah, bring biscuit when you come back from office." She smiled, her heart swelling, not with joy but with pride at the image she had built. Little did they know that the banker sold akara at the back alleys of Balagan Market. In the heart of the city, where glass towers kiss the sky and night markets never sleep, there lived a girl named Sarah. To her neighbors, she was the picture of success, always stepping out in polished heels, carrying a sleek handbag, her perfume announcing her presence before her voice ever did. She was young, barely 24, and every morning, she walked out of the rusty compound where she rented a small room, as though she were heading straight to an office on the island. But Sarah was not what she seemed. Beneath the layers of foundation and expensive-looking clothes was a secret she guarded more fiercely than her life. By day, she paraded herself as a rising corporate woman. By afternoon, she slipped into the back alleys of Balagan Market, changed into a simple apron, and became what she feared the world would mock her for: a street vendor selling fried yam and akara. Greed was her compass. Her life was not driven by survival alone. It was driven by the hunger to belong, to be envied, to be admired by the very people she despised. Sarah could have been honest about her hustle, but she craved a story larger than her reality. Every morning, as the compound gate creaked, children would watch her heels click on the concrete floor, whispering, "Auntie Sarah is going to the office again." The other tenants envied her, the men admired her, and the women secretly compared their lives to hers. She relished it. That envy was her daily fuel. But in cities like Lagos, secrets don't stay buried forever. And greed always leaves traces. What Sarah did not know was that her double life was drawing her into a storm. A storm that would not only strip her of the false image she wore but would also test the very limits of her soul. Because in this city, greed is a beast. And when you feed it, it doesn't sleep. It only grows hungrier. Sarah's mornings were a performance, and she was the star actress. Her neighbors would watch as she boarded buses heading toward the island, clutching her bag like it contained confidential files. What they didn't know was that she would get down 3 stops later, vanish into a backstreet, and change her clothes behind a stall owned by Mama Faith, an older woman who pitied her but kept her secret. By noon, the aroma of frying oil would rise as Sarah bent over her stand, hands moving swiftly, dropping yam slices into hot bubbling oil, scooping akara balls onto trays. Sweat would gather at her temples, her makeup washed away by the heat, and yet, her eyes always darted around, searching, fearing that someone she knew might walk by. To the market women, she was simply the fine girl that doesn't talk too much. To her neighbors, she was the banker. But every evening when she returned home with her face powdered again, shoes polished, and a practiced tired look on her face, the entire compound believed she had just finished a long day at a corporate desk. She never corrected them. She allowed their imaginations to run wild, because their belief in her fake life was her greatest joy. Sarah could have been content with her small savings from the food stall, but greed is never satisfied. She wanted more. More attention, more admiration, more illusion of wealth. Soon, she began borrowing dresses from a boutique owner she befriended, promising to pay later. She bought wigs she could barely afford. And she took photos at fancy cafes in Victoria Island, posting them online with captions like, "Another day, another meeting." The grind never stops. Her followers envied her. Neighbors whispered, "She must be making money. Where do people see this money?" Suitors began circling, young men with ambition, older men with money. She entertained them, always careful never to let them close enough to discover her truth. But the city has a way of unmasking pretenders. One evening, fate came walking, wearing the face of a young man named Paul. Paul was new to the compound, a fresh graduate who had just gotten an internship at a small tech firm. He was humble, observant, and unlike the others. He didn't worship Sarah's image. Instead, he studied her. He noticed how her shoes sometimes had dust on them when she claimed to return from an air-conditioned office. He noticed the faint smell of fried oil clinging to her clothes, no matter how much perfume she sprayed. He noticed. And he wondered. And curiosity, like greed, is a restless spirit. Sarah's life was about to collide with his questions. Because when truth and lies wrestle in the same room, only one can survive. The night the story truly began was quiet in the compound. The generator hums had died down, leaving the air filled with a faint smell of kerosene and roasted corn from the street. Sarah sat by her window, scrolling through her phone, admiring her own carefully curated life online. Dozens of likes, flattering comments, people she hadn't seen in years calling her boss lady, CEO in the making. She smiled, clutching her phone like it was proof that her lies were working. But downstairs, Paul sat on a bench, tapping away on his laptop. The glow lit up his thoughtful face. He had seen her earlier that day. Too early, too nervous, carrying a nylon bag that didn't look like something a banker should hold. He remembered the faint oil stain at the hem of her skirt. He remembered the way her eyes shifted when their gazes met. Something was off. Paul wasn't malicious. He wasn't seeking to destroy her. But truth. Truth has a way of searching for light, like smoke escaping through cracks. The next morning, Sarah dressed in her sharpest suit, a wine-colored one she borrowed from the boutique, heels clicking against the tiled floor of her tiny room. She sprayed perfume generously, adjusted her wig, and once again stepped out to live the lie. The children in the compound waved as usual. "Auntie Sarah, bring biscuit when you come back from office." She smiled, her heart swelling, not with joy but with pride at the image she had built. But Paul followed her that morning. Not too close, not too far. He watched her take the bus, saw her get down earlier than the island route, saw her slip into the narrow alley. He hid by a kiosk as she disappeared behind Mama Faith's stall. And minutes later there she was, her sharp suit folded in a nylon bag, apron tied across her waist, face bare, hands busy turning yam in hot oil. The sight struck him. For a moment he felt pity. She was not a fraudster. She was not stealing. She was working, sweating, hustling. But why hide? Why pretend? Paul turned away, but inside him, a conflict began to grow. Should he tell the others? Should he confront her? Or should he protect her secret? Meanwhile, Sarah counted her profits, her mind already running ahead. She dreamed of buying a new phone, of traveling to Dubai, of posting pictures that would silence her doubters forever. She told herself the lies were necessary. That image was everything, that nobody respected honesty anymore. But greed is a seed. And once watered, it grows into a tree whose branches spread wider than you can control. And soon, Sarah would water hers with a mistake too costly to hide. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline and Lagos traffic turned the streets into rivers of headlights, Sarah returned to the compound. Her apron was gone. Her face was powdered again. Her handbag dangled with practiced elegance. She walked past Paul, who sat quietly by the corridor. Their eyes met for a second. She smiled politely. But in his gaze she saw something. Something that made her heartbeat stumble. Suspicion. She turned away quickly, pretending to scroll through her phone as she climbed the narrow stairs to her room. But inside her chest, her heart pounded like a drum. Does he know? Did he see me? Sarah shook her head. Well, nobody had ever caught her before. She was too careful, too smart. But upstairs, as she laid her clothes neatly on the bed, she thought of Paul again. His eyes were different from the others. Where the compound men saw glamour, he saw through her layers. And that frightened her. The next day she doubled her act. She left earlier, heels sharper, suit fresher. She carried a file this time, a fake folder stuffed with old papers, just to silence any doubters. At the bus stop, she held it close to her chest, mimicking the confidence of the women in real offices. But Paul followed again, quietly, patiently. He saw the same ritual. The alley, the stall, the apron, the frying oil. This time he didn't just watch. He took a picture. One snap on his old phone. A picture of Sarah bent over the fire, apron tight around her waist, yam sizzling in hot oil. The smoke rising behind her like a shadow of truth she could no longer escape. That night, as Sarah posted another glamorous photo on Instagram, captioned "Back-to-back meetings. Lagos no-day smile." Paul stared at his phone. The picture. Her secret life. And he wondered, what kind of woman builds her entire world on lies? But Sarah was not thinking of him. She was thinking bigger now. She had started saving more from the stall. Customers loved her food. Traders called her "fine Auntie Akara." Some even tipped her because she looked too polished for the job. Her sales grew. Her money stacked. And with money came more greed. She rented gowns to attend weddings, pretending she was a guest from the corporate world. She bought fake designer bags just to snap photos. She even convinced her parents in the village that she was now an assistant manager at a bank. They boasted about her to neighbors, swelling with pride at the lies she fed them. The web of deceit was tightening around her. But Sarah didn't see it. Because greed blinds. And those who chase shadows eventually trip in the dark. And the darkness was closer than she thought. Days rolled into weeks, and Sarah's lie grew legs. In the compound, she was no longer just the banker. She had become a symbol. Women whispered, "If Sarah can make it, so can we." Men spoke of her with admiration. "That girl no day dull herself. She's a big woman already." Even children bragged that their Auntie Sarah worked in an office with air conditioning. And Sarah basked in it all. Her phone was her stage. She snapped pictures and borrowed clothes, posing in cafes she couldn't afford to eat in, smiling with drinks she never sipped. She tagged them with words like #hustlehard and #youngCEO. Each comment was a sweet drug that numbed her conscience. Her parents in the village were the proudest of all. Her mother would call in the evenings, her voice thick with joy. "Sarah, your father just told the whole church you are a manager now. Everyone is so proud of you." And Sarah, lying on her small mattress, staring at the peeling ceiling of her one-room apartment, would smile and say, "Yes, Mama. Promotion just came." At the other end of the line, her parents celebrated. In truth, Sarah felt no shame. She told herself that soon, her lies would become reality. Soon she would actually be rich. She just needed to keep the show going a little longer. But lies are like cracks in a wall. No matter how much paint you use, they always find a way to resurface. Paul kept watching. He wasn't the type to gossip, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's deception was dangerous. Sometimes he thought of confronting her, but each time he saw the pride on her face as neighbors hailed her, he held back. She's building her house on sand, he thought. And one day the storm will come. And storms, in cities like Lagos, never take long to gather. One Saturday afternoon, when the compound was buzzing with noise, children playing football, women spreading clothes on lines, men discussing politics, Sarah returned with a new handbag slung over her shoulder. She walked with that same deliberate grace, as if the world owed her admiration. But her handbag still carried the faint smell of fried oil. One of the women on the balcony sniffed and frowned. "Is it me? Or does Sarah's bag smell like akara?" The comment was innocent, whispered, almost playful. But like a match to dry grass it spread. That night, as people sat outside cooling off in the evening breeze, conversations shifted. "Have you noticed? She never actually tells us where she works." True. Always plenty stories but no details. And her clothes. Sometimes you see the same bag at the market. Maybe she's not what we think. The envy that once protected her image began to sour into suspicion. Sarah, oblivious, sat in her room taking selfies under the dim yellow bulb, typing captions about corporate stress. But downstairs, a seed had been planted. And seeds, once watered, always grow. The whispers grew legs. At first, it was only the women in the compound, trading suspicions in hushed tones while peeling vegetables in bowls on their laps. But in Lagos, gossip moves faster than buses on an empty third mainland bridge. By the next week, even the men at the corridor had begun to doubt her story. "See, I never once saw her wear office ID card," one man muttered, his voice low but laced with mischief. Another replied, "That's true, oh. Even cleaners get ID. How can a whole banker not wear one?" They laughed, half amused, half envious. But laughter is dangerous when it hides questions. Sarah noticed the shift. She noticed how the greetings had changed, from envy-soaked admiration to something thinner, colder, almost mocking. The smiles didn't last as long. The women's eyes lingered too much. The children no longer ran to hug her the same way. Something was cracking in her perfect mirror. To fight it, she doubled her lies. She spoke louder about her job. She faked phone calls in the corridor, raising her voice so neighbors would hear. "Yes, sir, the board meeting is tomorrow. I'll send the report." She laughed loudly, forcing confidence into her words. Some neighbors rolled their eyes. Others pretended to believe. But one person didn't pretend. Oh. He sat quietly at the corner, his laptop balanced on his knees, watching, listening. He had the picture on his phone, proof of the double life. But still he didn't expose her. Not yet. Something inside him told him the city itself would reveal her truth. And he was right. Because fate doesn't always need a stage. Sometimes truth arrives uninvited, wearing dust and sweat. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. The sun was merciless, the streets boiling with heat. Sarah had just finished at her food stand, tying her suit neatly in a nylon bag. She thought nobody was watching. She thought the world was fooled. But across the street, two women from her compound had come to buy fabric. Their eyes caught her instantly. "Sarah. Prin. Wet." For a moment, silence fell on them, disbelief freezing them in place. One of them almost laughed out loud. The other clutched her wrapper tightly. They exchanged a look that carried the weight of fire about to spread. They didn't confront her. They didn't shout. They didn't wave. They just walked away quietly, their minds already racing back to the compound. By evening, the news had traveled. Sarah, the banker, the young CEO, the Instagram star, was nothing more than a food seller in Balagan Market. The compound buzzed with cruel excitement. Some shook their heads. Some laughed. Some felt betrayed. The children who once looked up to her now mocked her in chants. "Auntie Akara, Auntie Akara." But Sarah didn't know yet. She was upstairs, adjusting her wig in front of a small mirror, getting ready to return from the office once more. She didn't know that downstairs, the stage had already been set. She didn't know that tonight, her curtain was about to fall. Because lies are fragile. And when the wind blows, they scatter like ash. That evening, the compound gathered as if by invisible command. The air was restless, carrying whispers, smirks, and the kind of silence that waits for drama. The women sat in clusters, their eyes fixed on the stairwell. The men leaned on walls, pretending to chat, but their gazes never left the upstairs corridor. Even the children, sensing something delicious in the air, abandoned their games and gathered near the gate. They were waiting. Then came the sound. Sarah's heels echoed down the corridor. She emerged in her polished wine-colored suit, handbag on her arm, face powdered and glowing under the dim compound bulb. She carried herself with the same pride, chin up, eyes bright, the very image of success. But this time, the applause of admiration never came. Instead, laughter. It started as a small chuckle from the back, then another, until it rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Sarah froze at the landing, her heart suddenly weak. She forced a smile, pretending not to notice. But then a voice rose. Dark. Mocking. "Madam Banker. How market today? Obby yam no sell well." The words cut through the night. Laughter exploded. Sarah's blood turned cold. She blinked rapidly, her hands tightening around her handbag. What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice trembling. Another voice came. "We saw you. Balagan Market. Prin. Frying akara." The compound roared with cruel amusement. Some clapped, others shouted, children danced around singing, "Auntie Akara, Auntie Akara!" Her legs wobbled. The proud suit she wore suddenly felt heavy, like chains dragging her down. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but the words tangled in her throat. "Liar!" someone shouted. "Deceiver!" another added. All this time forming big woman, "Na akara you day sell." Her face burned with shame. Tears blurred her vision. She turned toward her room, but the crowd blocked her path. Neighbors, once admirers, now judges. Their eyes were knives, cutting through every layer of her lies. Then, slowly, quietly, Paul stood from his corner. Unlike the others, he didn't laugh. He didn't mock. He simply pulled out his phone, raised it high, and showed the picture. The image of Sarah at the food stand, apron tight, yam frying in hot oil. The crowd gasped, then erupted again. The evidence was undeniable. The mask was gone. Sarah's knees gave way, and she sank onto the cold concrete, clutching her bag like it could shield her. Tears poured down her cheeks, washing away the makeup that had painted her false life. In that moment, the city swallowed her pride whole. Because greed had promised her glory, but delivered only disgrace. The laughter lingered long after the crowd dispersed. The compound had tasted her shame, and in Lagos, shame spreads faster than harmattan fire. By morning, the news had reached beyond the compound. Traders in the market called her name with mockery. Even online, a neighbor who had seen Paul's picture posted it anonymously. The comments poured in, cruel and merciless. Her parents called days later, voices shaking. "Sarah, people in the village are saying terrible things. Is it true?" She couldn't answer. For the first time, silence became her only language. She stopped wearing her suits. She stopped posting on social media. She no longer walked with her head high. Her room became her cage, the compound her courtroom, and every stare a sentence. Paul was the only one who looked at her without cruelty, but even he kept his distance. Weeks passed. Her food stall struggled. Customers avoided her now, laughing when they saw her apron. Her savings dwindled, debts grew, and loneliness became her only companion. But in her pain, truth finally sat with her. She realized the greed that pushed her to live a life of lies had stolen something greater than money or pride. It had stolen her peace. And so, one quiet dawn, Sarah walked out of the compound without her heels, without her suits, without the heavy mask she had worn for years. She carried only her apron, her pots, and the small dignity of honesty she was trying to rebuild. Because when greed strips a person bare, all that remains is the truth they once ran from.